it went from, honor, excitement to then I was nervous because, while I do fish, often bass fishing isn't usually, my top three, ways of fishing, so I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to get out there and embarrass myself. I don't want to embarrass Angie, like, what if I don't do a good job? And it's kind of like the same approach you said you took with the fishing 101. It was like, all right, I know that I don't know everything, but I know a couple of things. Let's see if I can piggyback off of that. And so, just...
Welcome to the Woman Angler and Adventurer Podcast, inspiring real women with a passion for fishing and the outdoors to go get their adventure on. Now, here's your host, Master Captain Angie Scott.
Welcome to another episode of the Woman Angler and Adventurer. I'm your host, Angie Scott, and today I'm excited to introduce you to a special guest and fellow Freedom Boat Club member and Freedom Boat sister, Lorraine Parkinson. Lorraine's passion for fishing is infectious, as I discovered at one of our Freedom Boat Sisters Fishing 101 meetups this past fall. Recently, Lorraine took a big leap and joined me as my partner in the final Two Chicks in a Boat women's team tournament trail on Kentucky Lake. And this was Lorraine's very first tournament. She absolutely brought her A game, and we're going to dive into her journey from that first spark of interest in fishing to competing in her first tournament, and to see where she might see herself going from there now that she's got the tournament bug. So whether you're new to fishing or a seasoned angler, Lorraine's story is sure to inspire you. So sit back, relax, and get ready for some great conversation on this episode of the Woman Angler and Adventurer Podcast. Well, Lorraine, thanks for being on the show, and let's just start at the beginning. What kind of sparked your interest initially for fishing?
Well, I'll have to say that I've always, I guess as long as I can remember, had a passion for fishing. When I was younger, my granddad used to take me out. He had a little John boat that it was a lot of us kids, so we used to have to take turns in. But
yeah,
when it was our turn, he kind of showed us the ropes, and pretty soon after I caught my fish, I was always looking to catch the next one.
It's an addiction.
Kind of followed me throughout life. Absolutely.
Yeah. And where was it you grew up?
So I actually grew up in Memphis, Tennessee.
Okay.
And so we used to fish kind of a few man-made lakes around there. Sometimes we'd travel a little bit further to Arca Butler Lake. We used to have some family vacations at Birdsong Resort. That's like the Tennessee River.
Okay.
So we kind of, integrated trips throughout my life. And I guess, it just kind of followed me into adulthood. And, now I kind of integrated fishing around my life. We kind of bought a house with the idea of being close to the sources of water that we like to, hang out in. So we kind of ended up right in an area that's 5 minutes from Old Hickory and 10 minutes from Percy Priest.
Nice.
So we kind of, just kind of get out as much as we can.
In any particular species, or do you just kind of go after whatever's biting?
Well, honestly, we generally have a plan of attack. Every day it's not the same species, but we generally do like to say, hey, if we're going jugging, then, we're going to target the brim and then, use the brim for big catfish bait. Or, if we're going to strictly target the crappie, then, we might pull for some small minnows or pick up minnows on the way. I mean, some days, don't get me wrong, it is no plan, and you just kind of take a little bit of everything, see if you got some worms in the fridge, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It just kind of depends on what we're feeling for the day.
Gotcha. Well, I know. I mentioned this in the intro, but you're a member of Freedom Boat Club, and so that's how we met. And you attended the little fishing 101 that I did this past fall for the Boat Sisters. So it seems like definitely getting to know you. You have a the passion for fishing, but also the desire to just continue to learn and learn different techniques. What is it about fishing that just draws you in and makes you want to dive deeper and learn more?
Well, it's funny. My husband and I joke that we work so that we can fish. We pretty much, so we did recently join the boat club about a year and a half ago. Our only regret with that is not joining sooner. We've got our own boats, we've got kayaks, we've got jet skis. I mean, we literally go to work and make money so that we can spend time on the water.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of one of those things that we're kind of always got it on the brain. I mean, even in the winter, we'll bundle up and, go see if we can find where the fish are. I mean, the spot that we hunt during hunting season is, we take our boat to access it. So, I mean, it's just, it's crazy how much it's kind of integrated its way into my life, but I wouldn't change it for a thing. I mean, there's just so many facets of it. And I think that's what I enjoyed most about your Fishing 101 is that, even though I've been fishing my whole life, there were plenty of things that you said in that I was like, oh, I didn't know that. Or, I didn't know how to tie this knot. Or, oh, I didn't know about that kind of bait. And, it's just such a vast world that, if you pay attention, there's stuff to learn there always.
Always, yeah. I think, too, sometimes for me, especially, I kind of grew up the same way fishing, with my dad and stuff. And when I got into bass fishing and tournament fishing, I got to a point where everything felt so overwhelming because there's just so many different techniques and different line and different knots and all the things. And, what kind of rod is best for this and that. And at one point, I remember a couple years ago, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to start pretend like I've never fished before. Let's just start at the very, very basics. And I kind of just put a pause and went back and learned all the things that I feel like I just kind of skimmed over or didn't really understand. Like, why is monofilament better for this technique? Or why would you use braid or fluorocarbon? And just, I just went back to the very, very beginning, and I found that was helpful. And that's kind of how I put my Fishing 101 together, was just based off of, me going back and learning the basics from the beginning. I think that's good, maybe for even experienced anglers to take a pause and just kind of, dial it back a little bit. But no, that's awesome. So let's talk about this recent tournament fishing experience, your first one. And I kind of had the idea about this when we met at that Fishing 101, because I knew Lori and Beth had started the Two Chicks in a Boat team tournament trail. And I fished one of their events last year on Lake Chickamauga. And so they do a lot of tournaments that aren't that far for us here in the Nashville area. And I thought, if I ever do, or maybe even fish the whole season with them, I'm going to see if Lorraine would want to be my partner. Because you're here, you're local. I'm like, it's perfect. You love fishing. I love to give people that experience if you've never gotten to do it before, just to introduce people to the sport. And so I didn't end up fishing the whole year this year. I actually took the whole year off from tournament fishing just because it's expensive and, it's a lot of time off work and whatnot. And so I just felt like I needed to take this year. And actually it worked out really, really well just because we have some other things going on that weren't expected. And so, I think it was kind of meant to be. But this opportunity came up to fish the Kentucky Lake tournament, which is only 2 hours for us from Nashville. And Lori and Beth and the Two Chicks in a Boat team trail. A lot of our friends that I've met through the Lady Bass Anglers were going to be fishing it. Marcella offered us a place to stay. I'm like, we got to do this. I can't turn it down. So I reached out to you, and lo and behold, you were willing to step up and be my team partner for this tournament. And ironically, you had just bought your Kentucky fishing license. So I think, again, it was a meant to be thing. What were your kind of feelings or thoughts when I initially reached out about it?
Well, first of all, huge thank you to you for that opportunity.
Absolutely.
It's nothing that I ever really would have, not ever, but it's nothing that I really considered, that I'd be interested in, not for any particular reason, but I mean, it just isn't one of the things that I normally think about on my normal train of thought. So,
right.
When you started talking about it and then you invited me, I mean, first of all, I was just, I was speechless. I was like, me? And I'm looking around. Are you sure you really mean me? So, I was honored. And then it went from, honor, excitement to then I was nervous because, while I do fish often, bass fishing isn't usually, my top three, ways of fishing, so I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't want to get out there and embarrass myself. I don't want to embarrass Angie, like, what if I don't do a good job? And it's kind of like the same approach you said you took with the fishing 101. It was like, all right, I know that I don't know everything, but I know a couple of things. Let's see if I can piggyback off of that. And so, just watching different videos and different techniques and, just kind of reminding myself, like, at the end of the day, this is still fishing. This is still something I love. Like, you got it. Just go out there and do what you always do.
Exactly. It's a great attitude.
And oh my goodness, I just had so much fun. It's crazy that you can think of, taking this thing that you already know you love, and then there's a way to elevate it. Like, who would have ever thought?
Yeah.
And so, it was just the whole experience, all the women that we met, everyone was so encouraging, while I was nervous, I mean, even, in our practices and the meet and greets and meeting everyone, everyone just had a way of just being normal people, and I know that's what we all are, but you get in your head like, oh my gosh, they're all professionals, they've done this a million times, I'm not good enough to be here, but they just kind of remind you that, hey, we're all out here just doing something we love. Like, let's just go have fun.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. It was amazing.
I love that attitude, and that's exactly how it should be. And, I know we texted a little bit back and forth, kind of preparing for, what we thought, maybe the fish we're going to be wanting. Cause I don't fish a ton in the summer, even for fun, just cause it's tough. It gets hot. The fish, they want to be in that cooler water. They want to be comfortable. I'm mostly a shallow water bass angler. And so that summer's just beat the crap out of me usually when I'm trying to figure out a fishery. I've never fished Kentucky Lake before. And so it was a lot for me, to just kind of figure out. So I knew it was going to be tough fishing. From the get-go, especially with the conditions. We did get to go out and practice fish a little bit, and we caught a couple really nice ones in practice, didn't we?
We did. We really did. It had us really feeling like, oh, we've got a solid plan.
Yep. We found an island. It's actually you that pointed out, hey, let's fish this island. And I was like, yeah, I've not tried it yet. We'll check it out. And I kind of looked at the map and I saw the back side and the sides of it were kind of closer to that shallow water. And then, but the outside of it, closer to the channel, was, next to some deeper water. And so I thought, hey, let's try that section. And we caught a couple keepers pretty quick. And I had another one on. This was the morning before the tournament, of course, not tournament day. But I had another one on that I ended up losing, but I'm pretty sure that would have been a keeper as well. So we would have had a limit that day by 7:20 a.m. I looked at my watch and I was like, oh, this is where we're going to start tomorrow. And, we had a little wind on Saturday morning. And then, of course, tournament day comes and no wind whatsoever.
At all.
It was a little bit overcast, I think, on Saturday, and Sunday was just bluebird skies. But they did reduce the limit because normally it's a 5-fish limit, but due to it being so hot, just to kind of, fish care is super important to Beth and Lori, as well as human care. Those are their two priorities with this tournament trail, is safety for us and safety for the fish. And so they made the call to reduce the limit to 3. And that was definitely a good call because out of 9 teams, there were 4 that didn't even bring in a fish at all. And that just to give you an idea of how tough it actually was out there. So, but I'm proud of you, how you fished. One of the things you texted me was like, how many rods should I bring? And that's a common question for co-anglers, when it's your first time, because you don't want to bring too much stuff, but then you don't want to have enough, so I think you ended up with 6 rods, maybe. tournament day?
I did for tournament day. Yep.
Yeah. And, when I started, 3 was literally all I had. I didn't even have a fourth rod. I brought everything I had when I first started. But that was kind of tough, to just only have 3. But you grinded it out all day. Even under that, heat. So we hit that island on tournament day. First of all, what was kind of like your experience with the whole, takeoff process, the anthem, all that?
Well, so I'll say that it was a little different from what I had envisioned in my mind. I feel like in my mind, it was like almost like a race where it's ready, set, go, and everybody's just like zoom, 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 and you just got to be careful not to run over the boats next to you. I found that this way was more effective, just the rolling, and it was fair. We picked a number, we knew our order, it was organized. We all were able to get out safely. We were all able to come back in safely.
Yep.
I loved how they highlighted the health of the fish as well as the health of the people. Hydration. It was hot.
Yeah.
I mean, they provided body armor, water, and drinks for us. I mean, big shout out to them because that's you don't even think about it. You're out there, you're fishing. But I mean, 8-9 hours of fishing, you got to think you got to stay hydrated out there. I mean, it's super easy to get lost in what you're doing and kind of forget to take care of your body because that adrenaline's pumping. Like, oh, I got to buy it. I got to reel this fish in.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Just shout out to them for thinking about that for us.
Yeah, that was really nice to have. And when you're out there on tournament day, it's hard to remind yourself to take those breaks. But I think both you and I did a good job of remembering to take a moment, hydrate a little bit. And so the blast off went really well. They made it really clear, you are not to pass another boater as you're leaving the no wake zone. You have to stay in your order, and everybody did great with that. So we stuck to our game plan, went to that island first thing. Nobody else was there, which was awesome. And I really thought, we're going to get 3 in the boat right away. And then we're going to go, our plan was to go to the rock quarry and try to upgrade some fish and get some bigger fish in the boat. But unfortunately, the fish had other plans. We get there, we start fishing. I see a little action up toward the shore, and I cast over there, and I hooked into this huge fish. And I'm like, Lorraine, get the net, and it's fighting. And I'm like, it's probably a big smallmouth. Oh, this is awesome. Lorraine gets the net.
We were excited.
Scoops. And there were still boaters going by. It was that quick that it happened. Everybody hadn't even blasted off yet. I think Beth and Lori were the last ones, and I saw them go by just as Lorraine was netting the fish. And I looked down, and I'm like, oh, it's a drum.
He was a big drum, but a drum nonetheless.
Yeah, not what we were looking for. But I didn't know this, but people said, well, that's a really good sign, because I guess when you catch a drum, there's usually bass around. And I have no doubt that there were. We missed some bites, I don't know if they would have been quality fish or not, but, there was definitely some activity there. It just wasn't like the morning before. And of course, being a weekend, it wasn't long before a boat pulled up on the island and started fishing it, whereas I would have wanted to turn around and go back and fish that deeper water again. And now there was a recreational boat there, so that kind of jacked up our plans a little bit. So we decided to fish around the island where that shallower water was, but it was also more shaded back there. So I was like, well, maybe, and we never tried this, so we'll see. But it was pretty dead. There were some birds hanging out and stuff, so some good signs, but just didn't pan out. So we ended up heading over to that rock quarry, and thankfully my what I experienced in practice there kind of capitalized on it tournament day, because that's where we hooked into the big one, the one that ended up winning big fish, nice smallmouth. Really thankful to you and your net job to get it in the boat, because that thing did not want to come in the boat, did it?
They didn't, and I was so nervous. I was like, oh my goodness, you cannot drop this fish, whatever you do.
Yeah, every time it would get close to the net, that smallmouth dove straight back down to the bottom again, and I'd have to reel it back up, and I don't know, that happened probably 3-4 times before we were able to finally get it in the net, but thankfully we did, because we grounded out the rest of the day, and that ended up being our only other keeper fish for the tournament. So, but it was great because we ended up cashing 2 checks, amazingly enough, with that one fish. Because we put in extra, Lorraine put in extra for the big bass prize, thankfully. And the thing only ended up weighing like 2.98 pounds, but it ended up being the big bass. So we got 2 checks for your very first tournament.
It placed us 5th place and gave us the big bass.
Yep.
Payout,
and I'll say, shout out to Beth and Lori for this team tournament trail that they've put together, because it is really geared toward introducing people to the sport. So anybody's welcome, brand new beginners, but they pay out really, really well. So to have 9 teams and pay out 5 spots is amazing. And not only that, but and shout out to Susan, Diane Williams' partner. She's the one who puts up that extra prize, which is awesome. So thank you, Susan. But not only that, but at the meeting they had a raffle. Everybody went home with prizes. They had some really nice prizes like rods and Bass Pro gift bags with various stuff in it, and some really nice stuff from Fish Her. And that was a lot of fun. I was hoping you would have won a rod because we did have an incident on tournament day, unfortunately.
We did.
But
it was unfortunate. My husband's like, originally I only had 5 rods, and then I remembered that my husband had one that I could, bring along with me, just because, you never know, you might lose a line, or, I might want something a little bit different. So I asked him, I was like, well, could I please just borrow it just for game day? I promise I'll return it as soon as the tournament's over. And wouldn't you know it, it was the only one I broke. It just happened to be his.
Yeah, but,
well.
Now he gets to go out and buy a new one, though, so.
That's right.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because you guys kind of made this a little bit of a family vacation, because your husband Patrick came, and we were at the Moors, which is where the tournament took out of. I actually got a transient slip for my boat, which I kept there. So every day, practice, I was able to just drive there and hop on the boat and go out. But talk a little bit about that experience your son Marley was with. Did you guys have a good time?
We did. So, it's I believe, you said it right. It was the Moors Resort. So we ended up booking a room at the lodge, which just so happens to be where we had our meet and greet. It was a very short walk or even drive down to the boat ramp. So, and for us, we definitely do like to plan our vacations around what we like to do. So, since we like to fish so much, we do generally plan, our vacations around fishing as well. The reason I had my Kentucky license is because we took a week-long vacation in the summer and got a little Airbnb that had a boat dock, and, brought our boat out and kind of just fished the Kentucky lake, during the week when there wasn't a lot of traffic. We weren't looking for anything in particular, just, looking at the fish finder and going to the marks on the map and, just hanging out, really. So, so for this one, being at the resort, it was pretty much all inclusive. It had a restaurant right in there with you. The hotel had a pool. It had mini golf. So generally speaking, my son, he's at the age where he's like, "Oh, Mom, we're fishing again," But for there to be all those other activities for him, it was just the best of both worlds. There was stuff we wanted to do, but also stuff that he could do, and there were other kids to play with. So it was just a perfect way to end the summer and, gear up for, back to school, so to speak.
Yep. Well, hopefully he had a great time, despite, fishing kind of being the theme of the weekend. But hopefully he, got a little excited with the whole tournament type thing. And who knows? Who knows what the future might bring for him?
Yeah, I know that's right.
Because I was that way when I was a kid. I got to where I was just like, ugh, so boring, But then when I got older, and that little competitive edge kicked in, and I was all about it. So,
well, I will say that, especially with the boat club now, we have the opportunity to invite friends, and so like when his friends come and like we do a fishing boat, and since we have so many, we always ask the families like, hey, are y'all interested in fishing? So if the kids are, we'll bring enough for the kids. And so we have had a few experiences where his friends would come and do like to fish. And so he does like to fish with his friends,
Okay.
He kind of has that competitive spirit. Like if his friend catches a fish, well, now he's got to catch a fish, and then he's got to catch a bigger fish,
Yep.
So I think the jury's still out, Of course, he may not choose it as his first pick, but I can see him actually, still kind of getting into things cautiously, obviously for his age. But I'm just grateful that we've got the opportunities that we do. I realize that we're blessed, and not everyone, can kind of live the lifestyle we do. So.
Yeah.
We're just always trying to encourage other people to, get out there. I've got older girlfriends who are like, oh, I've never been fishing. I'm like, come on, girl, I'll take you out. Like, I'm not a professional, but I'll show you what to do,
Yeah.
Room for everybody out here.
Well, now, and you've recently upgraded your boat, with, talk a little bit about that. It's a Bass Cat, right?
Yes, it's a Bass Cat boat. She is a beauty. So our thing is, so before the Bass Cat boat, we've been in a Duracraft John boat, basically, flat bottom, 16 foot. It's kind of like the best of both worlds because it's got, the bimini top and a ladder, so we can kind of go to the islands and we don't worry about it getting beat up. And, so we camp on Percy Priest often. That's just kind of one of our summer things. But it's a smaller boat. It's not the fastest, but it does get us out there. So this bass boat is kind of, our first, actually just like bass fishing boat that's geared up. It's got spot lock and live scope and, all the bells and whistles that, we've always, said over the years, like, oh, well, we need to get that, that'll level up our fishing game. So, we haven't been like on it much. We're still kind of working out a few kinks that it's got, but we're hoping that it's it's going to be a great experience for us, and I don't see why it wouldn't be.
Yeah,
knowing who we are and how we use our toys.
Yeah. So now that you've had a little taste of the tournament scene, what do you see in the future? Do you think it's something you might do again?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Now I don't know as far as being like my career, like, every weekend sort of thing. But, a few a year, definitely, I can see myself, committing to. I was kind of like crunching the numbers in my head, especially when I was kind of asking some of the other ladies, like, oh, how often do you, get out for tournaments or, I know a lot of the ladies had followed the whole Two Chicks in a Boat trail, so I was like, well, how far does that mean? How much are you traveling? How many weekends? How many days? Because like you said, I mean, there are expenses associated with each of those trips.
Yeah.
So I was just, I'm an accountant. So by nature, I was just, crunching the numbers in my head. Like, ooh, what is this? Is this something I can kind of, budget for in my own budget? And I can see how it could get expensive, especially like if you don't know people and, you're, renting a hotel room for those 3 days. I mean, you still got to think about, your boat that you bring. Are you, you got to pay to store it somewhere, whether it's on the water or off the water, just all these things. And I feel like for where we are in our lives, we could definitely, twice a year easily fit that in, no problem. Now, if I were to, want to get more serious, probably once my kid is in high school, you know, because he's got certain breaks and, you know, I don't want to leave him every weekend and, you know, just things like that. So,
right.
I mean, twice a year, I feel like I can definitely, you know, integrate them kind of like we did this one and made it like a vacation and a trip, you know what I mean? So,
yep.
kind of just, I found that as long as we're flexible, we can do a lot more versus saying, oh, well, we got to do this, we got to do this, we got to do this. I mean, just, I think having a son has taught us most that we just have to be flexible and, you know, go with the flow and, you know, kind of wait until the schedule comes out to see what we can plan for. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's usually a couple really close to us here in Tennessee that Beth and Lori pick out. So, you know, I think it might be easy for both of us if we want to team up again on a couple next year. So, but what as we'll kind of start closing this out because I know you're working and got to get back to that, and I've got some stuff to do as well. But what advice, now that you've had this first taste of it, would you give to other women who might be hesitant to take that first step and try competitive fishing?
My advice would be to not overthink it so much. If the opportunity comes and you can make it work, do it. You won't regret it. If anything, it'll give you a newfound interest of the sport, and you know it's going to be something that you're trying to do more often, not less. I don't see anyone who was, you know, in the tournament that we were in saying that there was anything negative about it that they would not want to come back for. You know, even the women that I talked to who had not caught any fish on tournament day. Because, I mean, mind you, the whole weekend was brutal. We were speaking to women the whole weekend who, you know, just, I mean, it was hot out there. I mean, people who just weren't having the best of luck. But the energy was still great. You know, we were all there having fun, having a great time, doing what we love. So, you know, if that's how you feel about fishing, come give it a shot.
Awesome. And well, we didn't mention this when you were talking about it being tough, but we went out after you guys got there Friday for a little while. And I've got the Crestliner MX-19. It's not the biggest boat, but Kentucky Lake is a huge body of water. And I happened to decide to go explore a little bit further than I had when I was just practicing with myself. And unbeknownst to me, it got super windy because we were like back in a bay where it wasn't too bad. And when we come out to the main lake, I was like, "Ooh, it's getting kind of gnarly out here." And that was probably the roughest water I've ever had my boat in. And you know, I just thought, "Oh, this is normal for Kentucky Lake." I've heard all the stories, you know, when it's just a big body of water, so it gets rough. And when I got back, as a side note, I ended up seeing one of my friends from Florida, our neighbors down in Fort Myers, unbeknownst to me, has a camper there at Moore's. And so I ran into him, and he's there like every weekend just about. And that was pretty awesome to see them. But he was like, Friday was the roughest I've seen that lake in a long time. And I was like, oh boy.
Yeah, and it was brutal. It was kind of like, man, when did this happen? I mean, you know, a lot of times you can kind of, as the day goes on, you know, the lake comes more alive, but most of it is just, you know, activity from other boaters. But I feel like that kind of wasn't our case. You know, it was like, man, like what happened? It was almost like a light switch turned on, and it was just like, whoa.
Yeah, it was...
we weren't really expecting this rough of a ride.
Nah, I would have stayed a lot closer if I knew that was going to happen. But it was fun, and I just want to thank you again so much for stepping up and doing the tournament with me, and hopefully we'll get to do some more in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.